A trusted female corrections officer in Alabama falls for an accused killer, and chaos ensues. Now, this may sound like the plot of a movie, but it's actually a real-life story making headlines. And here's what we know. Hi, thanks for watching True Crime Recaps. I'm Chris. Now, in another life, maybe Vicky White and Casey White would have met and fallen in love in the usual way. But as fate would have it, the two crossed paths while Casey was serving time for attempted murder and Vicky was his prison guard. Now, that meeting would lead to her eventual downfall. In April of 2022, Casey was awaiting trial for the 2015 murder of Connie Ridgway when Vicky helped him escape from prison. But their getaway was short-lived. They were captured after a high-speed car chase just 11 days later. And while Casey is back behind bars, Vicky took her own life when they got caught. No one suspected her life would take such a strange turn. For 17 years, 56-year-old Vicky White was a trusted corrections officer at the Lauderdale County Jail in Alabama. She worked her way up to assistant director of corrections. She was in charge of transporting inmates, and in one way or another, she came into contact with most of them. By all accounts, she was great at her job, and everyone she worked with admired and respected her. At home, she lived a quiet life. She was divorced, but stayed with her ex-husband until his death from Parkinson's disease in 2022. They had no children. Her mother lived next door, and the two of them were close, but she didn't know Vicky had a secret. In mid-April, she put in for early retirement. April 29th was supposed to be her last day at work. She didn't say a word about it to her family, although they couldn't help but notice she was making some big changes. She sold her house for about $95,000, well below market value, and moved in with her mother. Now, little did she know her daughter was making plans for a new life. 38-year-old Casey White was an accused killer and an all-around dangerous guy. In October 2015, 59-year-old Connie Ridgway was stabbed to death at her home in Rogersville, Alabama. A concerned neighbor wondered why she hadn't seen her all day, so she went to check on her. They found her door open and Connie dead on the floor in the hall. Who killed her and why was a mystery with no clues, and slowly, over the next 5 years, her case went cold. Now, that same year, a couple of months later, Casey forced his way into his ex-girlfriend's house at gunpoint. He shot and killed her dog and tried to do the same to her, but she escaped. Then he led police on a high-speed chase with a stolen car through 2 states before he ended up stuck in a field and out of options. Even then, he didn't go quietly. His former lawyer says Casey's got some issues. When he's on his meds and in a controlled environment like prison, he can appear to be a gentle giant. But left on his own, he tends to self-medicate with methamphetamines and morphs into a 6'9" monster. In the summer of 2020, he wrote a letter from prison confessing to Connie Ridgway's murder. And he claimed he was hired to kill her, but didn't say who paid him or why. And no evidence of a murder-for-hire plot has ever been revealed. And he might have had ulterior motives for that confession. His lawyer told WAFF that Casey hated Donaldson Prison and a murder confession was guaranteed to get him out of there and back to Lauderdale County Jail to wait for trial where the crime took place. That's where it all started. Vicky and Casey White aren't related, but investigators say they developed a special relationship when he was in her jail in 2020. Now, what's a special relationship mean? Well, the sheriff wouldn't give specifics, but he did say she made sure Casey got more food and gave him other privileges. But that arrangement didn't last long. They were only in the same jail for about 3 months before he was on his way back to Donaldson. And the reason why he got transferred will come as no surprise, considering how this story turned out. According to CNN, he was planning an escape attempt and threatening to take hostages. And they took him seriously when they found a shank on him. So much for his gentle giant persona. But even though they weren't in the same jail, they allegedly kept up their relationship with phone calls and letters, and they saw each other every few months as he moved in and out of Lauderdale County Jail. By February 2022, they were together again when Casey returned to her jail to go on trial for Connie Ridgway's murder. But secretly, he had no intention of seeing the inside of a courtroom. On Thursday, April 28, 2022, Vicky spent the night in a Quality Inn motel near the jail. This way, she wouldn't have to say a final goodbye to her mother. The next morning, she checked out early and headed to work. The plan was in motion. By 9 a.m., she and Casey were on the run. The escape started innocently enough. She simply walked him out of jail and put him in the backseat of her patrol car. Everyone thought she was taking him to the courthouse for a mental health evaluation, except he didn't have anything like that scheduled. But that wasn't the only red flag. Normally, an officer wouldn't be allowed to transport an inmate alone, especially not Casey, not after one plot to escape had already been foiled. But Vicky had the pull to break protocol. She waited until a couple of earlier courthouse transfers were already gone. At that point, all she had to do was tell coworkers she was the only one available. All the other officers with certified firearms were already at the courthouse. And who was going to argue with her? She was second in command with a spotless record. But she also needed a reason why they shouldn't expect her back anytime soon. And she had that covered. She told coworkers she was going to a doctor's appointment after dropping him off. Now, that bought them about 6 hours. It was around 4 p.m. when they tried her phone. It went straight to voicemail. That's when they realized Casey was missing too. Here's what happened. A getaway car was parked and waiting in a shopping center about 10 minutes away. They switched her patrol car for an orange 2007 Ford Edge Vicky had bought with a fake name and headed north. But the second phase of the escape didn't go quite as well as planned. The Ford was parked in the middle of a row of cars for sale to disguise it, but it stuck out for one reason she didn't count on. It didn't have a for sale sign on it, which is why one potential buyer remembered it. He'd been eyeing the car the night before they escaped and called it into the tip line. A description of the car hit social media accidentally, but they'd already ditched the car about 2 hours north. On May 6th, it was found in a tow lot about an hour outside of Nashville. It had been sitting there for a week. It had been left in the woods off the interstate. It looked like they might have used spray paint to disguise it. A few more days would pass before marshals got another good lead on their whereabouts, but there was plenty of speculation. Investigators found out she had been shopping for men's clothes at Kohl's before they ran off. Now that led them to wonder if the clothes were for him, her, or both of them as a disguise. There was talk he might be using a wheelchair to hide his size, or that she would have dyed her hair or cut it. U.S. Marshals were not ruling anything out. But of all the questions, the biggest one was why? Why would Vicky throw it all away for Casey? He's a man with a long history of relationships that end in fear and tragedy. In 2008, his former girlfriend, Chrissy Shelton, was shot in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun. Eventually, her death was ruled a suicide, but her family always thought there was something more to the story, especially because Casey was there at the time. Now WAFF says her case will be reopened to find out if she's another one of his victims. Sadly, we know how his latest relationship ended. The couple was spotted at a car wash in southern Indiana. Another tip came in pointing officers to a hotel in the same area. That's where Vicky was spotted, disguised in a wig. On May 10th, 2022, they drove off in a Cadillac with officers following. It didn't take long for them to realize the jig was up, and they took off. But the chase ended the same way Casey's last car chase had. Police ran them off the road into a ditch where the caddy flipped over, and Casey was dragged from the car yelling his wife had shot herself in the head and that he didn't do it, according to AL.com. It was true. Vicky turned the gun on herself. She died at the hospital not long after. Now, Casey's back in jail where the sheriff says he'll be kept in shackles and handcuffs round the clock until his trial. And that's your recap. So, what do you think? Was this love, or was she forced to do it? Let's talk about it in the comments. And thank you again for letting us bring you all the crime in half the time. Please watch another recap right now, and remember to subscribe so you stay up to date with this story and others every week. See you soon.